How many people have seen the Marvel movies with the Avengers? Anybody here? Yes. Want to share your favorite Avenger and why?
I would say Captain America has actually been my favorite. Just been so put together. He always has a plan. He's calm, cool, and collected all the time.
Awesome. Awesome. How about from this table? An Avenger and why?
I really think this is funny.
He's funny. Happens to be a billionaire. He's got a lot of good tech. How about over here? What do you guys?
You have no idea about any of them, so that's on you.
Black Widow.
Black Widow. Why? Yeah. Yeah. Highly trained. She's able to kind of suppress her own feelings to make sure that the group happens. Did you have one, or it looked like you were almost going to share? No.
No.
No. No. Who are the Avengers in your organization, and how do you get them to assemble? Do you call them one at a time? Do you, like in the video, have an event and a call comes in and then you need to make another call and then you find out that that person that you wanted is on vacation and that you have to then ask who's covering for them, and then you make another phone call? Or do you have a small incident management team pre-identified by role that share an on-call schedule, that are tied together with a group page or a WhatsApp group or some sort of paging technology that you're able to literally hit a button, whether it's red or not, and you're able to say, in 15 minutes, join this bridge line or join this Teams site because we have an event, and that you're not going to give away all of the individual details to each person that wants it. You're going to say, get on the bridge line, we're going to do this once, and then we're going to scale from there. If you don't have a system like that, I would ask yourself, what are the obstacles that are preventing you? Is it that we don't have defined roles? We don't have that kind of technology? We haven't just simply organized ourselves in that way? Because it's one of the early pieces that the chaos that you talked about before is going to happen. There is no way to avoid it, but it's one of the ways to decrease it, so that you are actually able to get to the response part and out of the notification part. The place that I used to work at, every Thursday at 3 o'clock, we used to change the core roles. And by core roles, I mean, who are the people that see themselves as potential Avengers? Your clinical person who's in your building and in a supervisorial position, even at night. Maybe it's a nursing supervisor, maybe it's some other role. Who's the administrative person who is in an on-call role? They have a duty to act. They stay within 45 minutes of your organization. Maybe they go to the movies or to a family gathering close enough by, and there's a laptop in their car. What about for those of you that have security? Do you have a security supervisor that's in your building as part of your core complement of boots on the ground? Any engineering or facilities folks here? Typically, there's a facilities person. If your organization is large enough, if it's old enough, complex enough, there's a plumber or an electrician or somebody who has that duty to act. You could tie those groups of people together and you have boots on the ground, authority by designation, and a small incident management team. Is that everybody you're going to need? No, you don't know exactly what you're going to need at this point. But it's a group of people that understand, oh, it's me if it happens tonight, if the thing happens at 2 in the morning. And having that group get together and say, we're all going to change our responsibilities at this time each week allows the off-going group to have a conversation with their oncoming partner. Hey, by the way, before I switch the pager over to you, this is what's still active. Or I wanted to update you that they're doing, maintenance on these elevators. Or there is that construction project out front that I want you to be. It doesn't matter what it is, but it allows role-to-role handoff prior to the next operational period, so that there really are Avengers when you hit the red button, rather than this kind of come find me game that takes a lot of time. All right, with that, we're gonna, sorry.
No, it's just lowering was, it sounded like you have an Avenger button. I think it was you were talking about the communication part. Or maybe it was someone else. I'm sorry, we were talking about getting the notification out to senior leadership.
This is low tech. You don't need, you might have a mass notification system. I'd advise that the simpler you make this and the more routinely you exercise it, the more reliable it becomes.
Hello?
Hi, Candy. This is Mary, the nurse manager. There is a flood on the 3rd floor, and I've emailed you the initial assessment of the incident. Mike, the maintenance guy, has stated that to repair the leak, the water is going to need to be shut down to the 3rd and 4th floors. I have the red emergency binder out. I see the job action sheets we can use to assign roles to manage this debacle.
Okay. As you already know, you're leading the incident response until I get there.
Can you please begin on the incident action plan and start assigning roles? I'm getting in my car after I hang up and we'll see you in 20 minutes.
Yes, I've asked everyone to huddle in the conference room we use for the Emergency Operations Center in 15 minutes. We will see you there. Okay guys, thanks for being here and apologies on the short notice. Let's review where we're at. I've begun the quick incident action plan for this event. I'd like to talk about utilizing our incident response guide for a utilities failure and set our incident objectives. Next slide, please.
Hi all, I'm here now. Thanks so much, Mary, for getting us started. We can transition incident command to me. Mary, can you give me an update?
Thanks, Candy. We are about to start reviewing objectives for this incident and are moving into updates. Mike, any more info on the water outage?
The water has been turned off to the 3rd and 4th floors. We anticipate that once the repair team is on site that the fix should take about 4 hours.
Thanks, Mike. Any other updates? Yes, Connie from Communications.
Our team is preparing draft communications for the facility, patients, and patient families.
Thank you, Connie. Everyone did a great job mobilizing at the start of this incident. Mary, I'd like you to transition to being both Planning Section Chief as well as the Operations Section Chief as we are short-staffed with the storm. Now let's talk incident objectives.
So now let's talk about incident objectives. Anybody know the difference between a goal and an objective? Not a trick question, just a little bit contra to what FEMA would say. A goal is more generalizable. It's a destination. It's not necessarily how to get there. An objective is how to get there. But in our federal government version of incident command, whether it's NHICS or hospital incident command, we often talk about objectives, but really we're meeting a goal. So we'll call them objectives. Anybody here play an instrument? No musicians in the room. Come on, you're not playing my game anymore. What do you guys play? What instrument do you play? Drums. And? Violin. Anybody else want to add? Piano. So if I asked you all to play music right now, would it sound good or not? And it's not a question of whether or not you're good at an instrument. What's missing? I haven't said whether I want you to play jazz or country or rock and roll. There's no music. All I know is that you play an instrument, and I've asked you to create music. But it's not music until you all get on the same page. Like, quite literally, to use the pun, I liked the fluid situation before. And so what you need from me, if I'm going to conduct, is a little bit more direction. But what you don't need me to do is to go and take your instrument from you and actually start playing it. Right? And so we may have been to that event where the incident commander is really good at lots of different instruments, and he or she starts to actually jump right out of objectives and goes directly into tactics and cripples their entire team, right? So rather than letting the drummer drum and set the beat for the music, rather than letting the violin and the piano play as well as they know how to play, I'm now stopping everybody from actually playing music because I want to, in some ways, control or demonstrate my ability to play those instruments. And so in an ideal world, in my opinion, the best incident commanders are ones that ask questions and facilitate, but they first have to pick the music that we're all going to pick. So we talked about initial notifications, establishing objectives, and initiating the incident action plan. The incident action plan is simply what we're doing to respond. It's a series of forms. It sounds super formal. It sounds really detailed and intricate, and it can be, but you can also get lost in it. It's really just the framework of the response. It's the various forms that keep the information organized so that people aren't being misled, so that when we actually figure something out and we write it down, we're not asking the question again. We're updating what is written down. And then, of course, executing the plan, constantly getting feedback on whether or not just are the objectives set, not just are the tactics identified, but where are we with the various action items that we've identified? Are we walking them to ground? So has anybody ever seen this before? By this I mean this.
Yes.
It's the planning P. Look at you guys. That is definitely the biggest response we've had from 7 of these sessions. So the planning P. I really like the planning P. I'm kind of a nerd. So I'm on a federal disaster team, and it's a medical team. And although I am a paramedic, I don't go out the door as a clinical provider on this team. It's like 35, 36 people. We go get pre-positioned if it's a hurricane, or when the Red River floods, we go out and we help with the recovery, the response and recovery. During COVID, we were actually doing backfills to hospitals because staff were just exhausted. And so we were filling in for ICUs. But I don't go out the door as a clinician. I go out the door as the planning section chief. And I bring with me the planning P. And why do I like the planning P so much? I have to say, I didn't really appreciate the value of the planning P until my first deployment as the planning section chief, where my incident commander said, do you have your planning P? You've got to make sure that we're staying on target. Because here's the incident. We talked about the notifications. I know you can't read it in the back. It's in your on your slides too, but it's initial response and assessment, the incident action brief, quick start, and the initial meeting. Once we get up here, this is called the operational O. This hurts. This part here, I don't care what you're going to, how rehearsed you are, this hurts. For any organization, from incident until we get into, pretty much until we get to the first operational briefing. It's chaotic, it takes time, there's tons of misinformation. Our incident commanders, no matter how good they are, will make early decisions about what we want to do. And here's the tricky part. They will then emotionally invest in the decisions they've made. And the trick is to not only get to here where we can get organized, but to then challenge some of the basic assumptions that we've made as we're responding. And how do you do all of this? Well, you hire somebody to be, or you appoint somebody to be your planning section chief. So if you're not identifying the planning section chief as one of the critical roles that you need in an incident management team, here's 2 thoughts. 1, I think you're missing a big opportunity. And 2, someone's doing it. You're just not giving them the authority, the tools, or the structure to actually carry that role out. So let's keep going up. Okay, so incident happens, hurts. This is the incident command or unified command developing updates and objectives, right? What music are we playing? Do we actually have written notes or music sheets for that? Command and general staff, we're gonna get into a tactics meeting. Planning needs to look at both the period we're in and at least 1, if not 2 operational periods out. Do we have enough space, staff, stuff, structure, security for our next 12, 24 hours, whatever that is? And then we're going to land here at the operational briefing. For those that are in the military, operational briefings, and I've not served in the military, but what I would say is when we get here to the operational briefing, it's when there's a change in people's organization and expectation. There's an exhalation that happens to a team like mine when we get to the first operational briefing, because it sets up a battle rhythm. You start to recognize who is on this response with you, what the objectives are, how you're going to get information, how you're going to communicate your needs for equipment or structure or security or stuff. It's where a tremendous amount of brokering happens. It's where new challenges get identified, and maybe equally, if not more importantly, where accountability for the things that you set out and said need to get done, that's where you're getting the operational briefing. It shouldn't be long. So if I take from my federal deployment. We would get activated. We'd muster at an airport. We'd fly to some staging location. We would then move by ground with 5 18-wheeler tractor trailers full of stuff to some location. We'd then interface with that either local government or facility. We'd get our mission assignment. Then we'd start setting up tents, right? So it's like 2 to 3 days of hurry up and wait. We start setting up tents, typically in the middle of the night with headlamps on. And when we get the first tent almost set up, and we need to set up 3 of them, we take half the people that are responding and we put them to sleep. As soon as the first tent is set up, we sleep half of our staff. Why? Because the rest of us are going to work through the night, get operational. Those folks are going to wake up and take care of patients. And so we'll have an operational briefing somewhere in day 3, kind of at the start. This is the building, this is how we're setting up, this is our interface, this is our mission, this is the equipment that we have, this is the equipment that's on order, and then we go around the O until it's time to get relieved and go home, or backfilled or shut it down and put all the stuff away. Does that make sense? Your events in your facility may not last as long as a 14-day deployment like mine, where literally after day 3, it's like Groundhog Day. I mean, it is like the same thing over and over again. But what I think is valuable about the Planning P is recognizing that as you think of your program from a quality improvement perspective, the time it takes you to go through these steps can be improved if you understand that these steps are necessary and that you, as the conductor, as the whisperer of the incident commander, you have the ability to influence how fast your organization moves through these various steps. You can jump over stuff, but you'll arrive here with a lot of blanks and a lot of chaos, where there's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. Or you can arrive here and people will exhale. They'll be like, wow, this is an organized response, like you saw in the cartoon. It's a cartoon, but it can really look like that. You just have to set up a routine that people can count on and reproduce it with a high degree of fidelity. So the response priorities are life-saving, incident stabilization, and property preservation. Again, Planning P, you can keep or toss. I happen to think it's a valuable tool and a lot of good concepts. So we have an activity for you, and there's 2 parts that I want to tune you into on this activity. The first is, page 42 behind the tab of your participant guide, and you're going to see a table that looks just like the one that's up here that has objectives, strategies, tactics, resources required, and assigned to. And if you look above in blue, you're going to see objectives that are already written for you for the event that they are experiencing at Bockhaven Medical Center or hospital. I also want to point out that those weren't written by us for you. They're part of the incident response guide. They're part of the 15 incident response guides that you could download on your phone or when you get back to your office, that you could have in a box that are going to cover 15 common operational disruptions to your facility, irrespective of whether you're a hospital or a clinic. And you'd at least be starting with 3 or 4, sometimes 5, incident objectives that you can modify. They're PDFs, but they're also in Word. And so you don't have to take them as they come off of the internet. You can modify them to make more sense for your facility. But in your groups, you're going to select at least one of those objectives, and you're going to then walk it through at your group. And then we're going to report out which objective you picked and what you all identified as your strategies, tactics, resources needed, and who you assigned it to. Are there any questions about that? Okay, go to it. Okay. Can I give you guys a heads up that I'm going to call on you to report out? On All right, I'll pull you out of your groups. IRG's incident response guides. If you want to see what one looks like, they're on page 13 of your resource guide. It's the same 4 objectives that you saw at the top of this exercise. Just trying to connect the dots. Any table want to go first with their objective that they selected and then walk us through the tactics that you identified?
Yeah, we'll go first.
Okay, yes.
So we're here from a clinic perspective.
Great.
We're kind of thinking that way. The objective we picked was to minimize the impact on operations of clinic services. And our one being problem was that our radiology suite is on this floor. So we started thinking about where can we move maybe our machine? What can our vendor do for us to help impact the patients so they can get care to their mammogram already? I'm getting those folks rescheduled. And then looking ahead on schedules to get those folks rescheduled. Who's our community partner for radiology services? Has someone already called them and asked for their ability to take some of our volume from us? Long-term plan, I assume, because the fix to the area, the water damage isn't going to be quick. What else to give? No, what we can do with the staff, since they'll be standing around after a while, how else can we use them?
So it's a great list. I heard how do we complete the people that are already in process? How do we either find a new location to be able to do some of our imaging studies, or who are our partners that we can utilize? I heard some scheduling. We'd have to maybe redo or rejigger some scheduling. Tell me, of the people that you originally thought of that would be part of your Avenger team, did any new roles come up in doing this exercise of, oh, I actually might need to add another role to our incident management team as a result of some of the tactics? And it's okay if the answer is no.
But I think, we didn't really think of, we didn't, I think it was just communication.
Okay.
So I think all the.
Communication.
Roles,
Okay. Anybody else pick that objective? Pick the objective of sustaining the operations.
Impact on, operations and clinical service.
Nobody else selected that one? Okay. It's a great list. It's a great set of tactics. Who wants to do a different one? Yes.
So we picked communication
Okay.
to the residents, patients, staff. So what we felt is first we had to make sure we talk to our staff to make sure they are aware. So starting with the staff on site about what is going on, what they need to be doing, how their office communicate to with the patients. And then we also talked about using our overhead system facilities to set some kind of something out there just saying that there is a water issue. People will be coming around explaining it to you individually because what we wanted to do then is use all the staff on site to go around and talk to the residents, staff, or communicate with them as you can. Some people are down for a few understand. And then get that to them as any other public that might be in the facility. And then the public that's not there yet, such as family members, providers, people that we weren't going to using some of the systems we already created to show told that we send communication.
Great. That's a great list. Another great list. Anybody else pick communications and have anything that they would add to the list of tactics? Yes.
We picked that was
Not surprising.
And I think from an external standpoint, you've got patients, visitors there, that should immediately go to an external place and media can call. So putting together a media statement checking in for social media monitoring if people are chattering about the situation on social channels or other things that we added.
It's great.
But we had a lot of the same things.
Yep. So getting a message out early. We're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to take a deeper dive into communications, but those are great lists. One last objective. You guys?
We did maintain patient care capabilities. We didn't get a great long list, but we had a lot of discussion, and I think Dr. McCall always, if water is out, toileting.
Okay. How are we going to toilet if we've turned the water off, right?
Yeah, toileting, bathing, but only 4 hours maybe when you worry about bathing, but you never know the long term, it could be longer.
Yep.
And then like back operations background as well. I look at water and I worry about electricity and power.
Yep.
So
Is there a potential
we haven't gotten.
cascade?
Yeah.
So on the maintenance of the care environment, anybody else pick that one? What else did you have in addition to what we've already heard for strategies and tactics?
Moving patients.
Okay.
Was the big one. And then the thing we identified when you mentioned earlier, did this lead you to recognizing that somebody else was using?
Yep.
The piece we recognize is that moving patients, those patients, plural, all have different needs. And we're going to need clinical expertise for all those impacted ways of caring for patients so that we move them safely into the right place.
Right. So do I have a place for them to go to? If I do, is it set up and ready to actually receive them? Okay. If it's risky to move patients, which the sicker they are, the more fragile they are, do I have the staff to do it, or am I going to rob Peter to pay Paul? Am I going to take the staff that I currently have and I'm going to use them in a team to move a patient, only leaving my actual care environment stressed with fewer people, and then once they get set up in the new location, who else needs to know? So there's a number of communication pieces and maybe additional pieces to activate. I don't know about Minnesota. In Massachusetts, if I move a patient because of a utility failure while treatment is being rendered, that's a big deal. And I need to actually, not right in the moment, but sometime in the near future, tell them about it, the Department of Public Health. And so whether or not a regulatory person is on your team of Avengers, and again, maybe they're not on that small group with the red button, but maybe because I'm moving patients, because something in my environment of care now was a risk and I needed to move patients as a result, I might need to reassess who I have responding and invite them in to an operational briefing where they can become knowledgeable about what's going on and what has happened, and then they can give guidance about the additional information that they need in order for us to meet the regulatory concerns. If I didn't say it before, it's really important to say, I don't think your goal should be to meet regulatory scrutiny. That is like minimum table stakes. Your goal should be to be able to respond to emergencies appropriately, and if you're doing that, you likely are meeting the regulatory concerns. So if you've not, from a show of hands previously, been the incident commander, you just went through an exercise armed with a super simple Word document that's free and online. You went through an exercise where you identified a bunch of work that was the right work and put appropriately in the right order that allows that chaotic period to actually get organized. And so job well done. Good, and thank you for everybody that contributed. So let's talk a little bit about role assignments and whether or not it's okay if people that show up don't have a job. So role assignments obviously do all of the things that are written up here. They reduce confusion, they improve coordination. Some of the roles, we don't want to change their names because they're externally facing. But we want to assign roles to people who have the appropriate knowledge. Do we want our facilities manager in charge of comms if we have professional communications specialists? Probably not. However, the facilities lead might have a lot of technical information that is the stuff that the comms people need in order to translate it into a message that is appropriate, either internally or externally. If your facilities folks, the Army in blue in your facility, if they're called engineering, then change the name on your incident command system. Don't call them facilities if you every day call them engineering. If your environmental services folks have a different name, name them that. If you can picture an organizational chart of incident command in your head, you would know that across the operations, logistics, planning, finance, or admin, everything below, feel free to change to the name that your organization calls it. In fact, to some extent, change where it reports within HICS to mirror how it reports in your organization. Don't change the names from across the planning, logistics, operations, and finance up. Why? Because those are externally facing roles. So when someone from the outside who's here to help, right, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, wants to talk to your PIO, who are they asking for? Public Information Officer. That's a HICS term. Can your communications folks change that to MARCOM? No, they shouldn't. I mean, you can. I'm not going to come and fine you like Monopoly, money points, but you're making it confusing for the external organizations to be able to interface with you. So if you have an administrator on duty or an administrator on call or a doc on call or whatever that person is that becomes the incident commander, I think in times of peace, call them whatever you call them. When they activate your system, they need to become the incident commander, because that's what makes sense to the outside world. And that's, if you're dealing with something that's big enough, that's the role they're going to ask for. So there is some interoperability that we need to have with external partners. We're going to improve coordination. What happens if you don't give somebody a job? If they don't have a designated role, and it could happen at any level of the organization, but sometimes in some facilities, it's a well-intended, very senior person who finds their way into your command center and then says, they might not even announce themselves. They just start taking resources and directing them. And maybe this has never happened to you, but if it hasn't, that's great. You must be doing something that prevents that from happening. And I'd love for you to share with the group what that is. Having roles, job action sheets, the dusty bucket of stuff, the vests, whatever that is one of the ways in which you can make sure that the people that are in your command center belong there. And if they do belong there, and sometimes they get to decide if they belong there or not, you don't, they have roles that make sense. And again, if they're playing the HICS game, they should be able to see your quick start, they should be able to read your objectives if they're not the ones that are setting them, and they should know where on the strategies and tactics they can help out. Our senior folks that respond, I love them because they remove obstacles quickly, but they have to understand that they're not there without structure. They have to come into, and you either do that in advance or you do that in the moment. 5 Days at Memorial, it was a pretty famous book, and it's now like a TV series, which I haven't watched, but a lot of times good books turn into bad TV series. So I'll reference the book. It's a story about a hospital during Katrina that the lights go out, the toilets stop working, they run out of food, and for those that can get out, do. And for those that can't get out, they stay, and there's a few people that stay with them. And over the course of 5 days, they de-evolve, and it's like, if you've ever seen Apocalypse Now, it's like going up the river. It just gets more and more primal as the days go on. But one of the things that happens in that story, and it's a tragic true story, is that they create incident command. They literally make it up, because smart people in a terrible situation will figure out how to do this, whether they've been trained on it or not. And I guess the question to you is, do you want to learn and how to implement HICS because you're in a building with no HVAC, no food, no working sanitation, or under peacetime's light of day in a climate-controlled conference room, you can actually train folks what HICS is and job action sheets and all the like. And so my appeal to you is HICS will come out eventually. It's how people will get organized eventually. Or you can actually practice it, but you have to get past all the jargon and all the forms, and whether you're vested or not, pun intended, with the colored vests. Me and I we're always talking about like get rich quick ideas, and we were going to come up with koozies, right? That like the red ones that have operations, and that maybe people, because they're always drinking in command centers, everyone's always got a soda of some kind. Maybe that's the way to get people to identify what role they have. So roles help staff stay in their lanes. If you have someone that's out of a lane, they are freelancing. And they will eventually take away attention and resources if you don't give them a job. And so you can give them a citation, but more appropriately giving them just-in-time training, having someone who is a great instructor, pair them with a buddy so that they can get involved, move obstacles on your behalf. And part of that, if they're very senior, might be because they're not getting enough information from you. And so think about what can I be doing to get their support from a distance where it's appropriate, and let the folks that do it every day do the thing that they know how to do. Transfer of command. So, yes.
Make one comment
Please.
on your last slide.
Please.
So if you get a freelancer that is a super senior level position in your company, one thing that I really worry about in that situation is how they can bring the morale of the key incident command team down. Like, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Well, that truth is trying to work. So that might be an opportunity to be a whisperer to your incident commander, to say, noticing that having discourse, interjecting things randomly is causing additional stress on the team.
It's such a great point, and maybe because we're likely not going to, have them face the trauma of their childhood and grow, in the moment. Maybe simply saying, is there a way to ask that as a question? Is there a way to phrase what you're communicating rather than it coming from you? How do you pull it from the group? Because people can really start to shut down. I think it's such a great point. And the morale, me and I talk about, it's these small gestures like the snow events in Massachusetts when we would put a team in the building because we're going to get, a blizzard or so much snow that, ingress and egress are going to be very difficult. So we're going to have a group of people sleeping in the hospital to weather the storm. Well, in the middle of the night, we go down to the kitchen and we get a bunch of the pre-made turkey sandwiches and the yogurt and the chips, and we put it on carts and we go up to the floors and we just put the food in the staff lounges, recognizing that I don't know what a turkey sandwich costs, but it's not a lot for what it buys in support. I'm here with you. I know you're busy. You may be working an extra shift. Here's a little bit of food. You can still take your break and go to the cafeteria, but if you decide not to, here's a little bit of food that we brought up for you. It's these tiny gestures that can mean so much to keep morale going. And if you have a senior person and you're not sure what to do, passing out turkey sandwiches might be an incredibly positive thing for everybody involved, and some generous thank yous. Thank you for that. Transfer of command, your events may not last that long. COVID aside, most of our events, if you do what I have encouraged you to do, which is to set the threshold to activation lower, they're not going to last all that long. So you might get the nurse supervisor who was initially in charge gets replaced by the incident commander once they come on site. That's a transfer of command. But if you have a multiple day like this water outage, we had a water boil event in Boston where we were moving water vertically through our building for a couple of days because we thought that there was, so the local water authority said, there was a break in the pipe or something like that, and so the water is not safe. So we have immunocompromised populations, we have, kids with cancer, and so brushing your teeth or mom or dad taking a shower in their bathroom and aerosolizing water that's no longer potable posed a problem. So we turned all the water off so that they couldn't do that, and then we handed out, gallons of water and Desanti bottles and part of our water plan. That was an event where we had to transfer command because the operational periods were too long for any one person to do it every day for an extended period of time. How do you do it? Well, of course, it's going to matter in your organization. It's going to be specific to the event. But having something that looks consistent in each of your operational briefings allows for that transfer of command to occur more seamlessly. We were in Rochester, and we asked so for the firefighters, we asked one of the city emergency management deputies, from a firefighter perspective, how do you transfer command, right? I said before that they are incident command experts. And he stood up, all like 6'10" of him. He was an enormous person. And he said, the battalion chief will be in charge once they get on scene If, so the first engine goes out and a captain steps off the engine and they're in charge. And then more apparatus shows up and maybe a captain shows up. Well, at some point, if it gets big enough, a battalion chief is going to show up and they're going to assume command. They're going to transfer command to the battalion chief. And I said, any pearl of wisdom for us? And he said, the really good battalion chiefs won't disrupt the command unnecessarily. They'll wait until an operational briefing, a natural pause in the flow, and they'll insert themselves at that point. It's a learning opportunity for the person that's in charge. They get a whisperer, someone who has the authority and the experience, but they don't take over. And I thought it was such a wonderful point, I wanted to repeat it here, that just because a higher trained person walks into the room doesn't necessarily mean that the best thing to do is to immediately give it over to them. Let them be a part of the response. Let them sit in on one of the op briefings and get ready for a formal transfer. Yes?
So that kind of goes into my next question about how you decide who becomes like the commander and who gets in those roles, because there's kind of it depends on the kind of the situation. So should it be more like the contact expert, which type of emergency you're dealing with, or should it really be someone who has experience with the role and understands the structure that helps, delegate or assign those roles? And also, we talk a lot about our senior leadership. How often is it our senior leadership is or should be part of those roles? And I guess in any past training I've had about incident command, it's not always your most senior person that should get roles. And so kind of that initial setup is where I stumble. I just in my COVID course as a public health nurse working in public health at that time, I have some questions about how our initial incident command was set up. And still struggle with how it was initially determined and then for election.
Yeah. So it's a great question. I hope everybody heard it. It was, how do you get the right person in that top job? And of course, unfortunately, my answer is going to be it depends, right? It depends on what the event is. It depends on who's available. It depends on how well or successfully the initial team is managing the event, how urgently you need to sub that person out or not. I will share with you what I did from my early experience at Boston Children's that I think it worked for me. Whether it's a best practice or not, I'm not that arrogant to say, but it worked for me. I had 12 administrators on call or on duty, AODs. They were all senior leaders of departments that were clinical and ran 24 hours. So they all understood the 24-hour cycle of the hospitals. That was the criteria for being one of them. And although I had an emergency preparedness committee, and some of them were on the committee, I had a separate M&M that was just for them. So an M&M is a morbidity and mortality style meeting where we would not look at the decisions made on a patient that had a negative outcome or a serious outcome, but every event that occurred, right? You remember I set the threshold in the organization, so we were activating every 2.6 weeks, and I'm not making that stat up. And we tracked that for years. And it was a little lumpy, right? So it wasn't always like one every 2.6. Sometimes it was 3 in a week, and sometimes it was a couple months without. But the point is, every time we activated, we wrote an after-action report. Every time we activated, the after-action report had to go to committee. Every time we activated, the 12 AODs had their own session each month where they would be asked to present the leadership decisions that they made on that after-action of the event. And the point there is they not only got comfortable sharing their own vulnerability around decision-making and leadership, but they also were presenting their decision-making capability, and the other people that had that responsibility were able to ask them additional questions. How did you know to do that? How did you know to call the FAA when you got the call? When the FAA called you and said the construction crane at the top of the building does not have a blinking red light, and you activated a system, how did you know who to get involved? The point being, you will understand better the different leadership styles of your list. You'll also understand that, the person who happens to be on duty when the call comes in, they're in charge. If they need help, there are lots of ways, rather than just transferring command, of getting them the technical support in order to increase the response. You can also try to sub them out, right? You could say, this is really very specific to our laboratory safety. One of our AODs is in charge of the lab. How about we make this person in charge? Or in some instances, and this is my own personal feeling, the best incident commanders are the ones that are just great facilitators. They actually aren't the technical expert because they're looking at the big picture. And so they're asking the right questions and they're bringing in the right people and they're strong in their communication and their leadership and they're positive with their compliments. They support the response by being very complimentary of the people that are responding. I hope I didn't go too far. I mean, there isn't like a, in that instance, do this, but I think if you're training that muscle across a group of people, you have a greater pool in which to borrow from when in fact you are looking at an event that's just nasty and the person that's in charge is just not necessarily as experienced as you would have liked them to be in order to respond.
Can I give also the official Hicks answer? If you look through all the Hicks doctrine, you can have a medical technical specialist in your command team, so in your operations center and an actual role. So it is something like, some medical like let's take CrowdStrike. So people in the IT have a lot of great expertise that boy do you need, but might not have the expertise that you also need in emergency management, incident command, and the operations of your facility. So so that's one way to bring in technical expertise if you feel like you need it, and to help, to your point, help the incident commander with some of those decisions. And then the other one you were asking about the senior leaders. There's another, again, in the Hicks guidebook, you can have some of the diagrams show the incident commander and the command staff, and they have a line to the agency executive up above. And we have that a little bit later in the afternoon. So that's something, again, that sometimes can give permission to that agency executive to say, oh, right, I'm not the incident commander. I have a role that actually is official and above the command staff.
The last thought I have is you could say, look, this is a big event and I recognize that you've been managing for a while. We need you, right, potentially, to go back into the on-call for anything else that happens. But for this event, we're actually going to pick this person in order to lead us. But anything else that's coming in, you're back into the on-duty spot. So it all depends on the relationship that you have and whether or not you can pull that off. Mia gave this away earlier, internal and external communications. Who's missing from this list? Vendors? Because you consider them internal? Okay, that's great. So maybe they're not over here, but rather they're over here. Yep. I'll buy that.
I call out leadership different from staff.
Why?
Because they need to know what's happening. They're going to get the questions.
So if I'm a clinic and somebody who comes to my clinic confuses the gas for the brake and puts their car into my waiting room, why is that a problem that your senior leadership needs to know about?
Media, just different emergency funds, what else? Staff are going to look to their direct supervisor for information. So if they're like, I don't know what's going on, that doesn't create a sense of security for your employees.
So those are great answers. Media, maybe there's going to be some, activity around our physical insurance, around, rebuilding, and staff need to know. Why? Let's go another layer deeper on media. Why is it important that your senior leadership know now that media has put a truck in front of your building and has a tight shot of the car through the wall with the overhang sign?
They usually have someone already picked out that they want to speak for your organization. It's not just
It's not just anybody that should be talking to media. In fact, if you haven't in some way trained your staff that while during an event, if you get a phone call from media, anybody who identifies themselves as media and wants to ask you questions, 100% of your staff should all be trained to say, I'm not the right person to ask that question to, but I'll tell you who is, and it should all be ported into your media point of contact, one of your Avengers. It's the brand that your company represents. That's why your senior leader ought not, hear about the event of the car through the building or the water event or whatever the disruption is from the news, because if they are catching it on the news, they are not prepared. They haven't been told who's responding, what the priorities are. They don't have the holding statement. They haven't been prepped for any kind of interview. And because they are now feeling like they just saw a snake, right? Remember back to that. And they got surprised by that. They're not going to like that. And that's going to go downhill and eventually come back to you, which is going to question whether or not we are managing this event appropriately. Are we actually in control? What are we doing? Right. So this is an incredibly important list. And I wouldn't say that, that it's most important at the top and it gets less important toward the bottom. You could just say they're all important, but the one that's missing from this list is the senior leadership piece, and having a channel, a way in which you update them. In the place that I came from, nobody talked to the senior leader, the CEO, without the incident commander's permission, right? That was a call made by the incident commander. Sometimes he or she did it themselves, sometimes they let somebody else do it, but they needed, and it was part of the checklist of one of the things that we made sure not only that we got through the operational P and we got to that op briefing, but are we letting senior leadership do? It's not the first thing. I don't think it's the first priority because we don't know enough. They're going to have too many questions that we're not going to have answers to. But there's an art form there when you contact your senior leadership. How quickly does this message become external? As quick as you can write it. Like, while you're writing it, it's becoming external. So if you think there is some sort of paper wall between internal messages and external, you are kidding yourself. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't send something, but you should send it with the eyes assuming it's just too easy to forward it on or to have it intercepted for it to show up on social media. It's just a matter of time. Is it better to be fast or to be right? It's better to be right. And that's tricky, because if it takes you a while to be right, what's going to happen? Misinformation will fill the void. It's 100% true that if you take too long, people will make stuff up. I don't know what part of the human, what part of us does this. But once we know that there is an event and we haven't heard, we will make up the craziest thing that sounds great, and it will spread like wildfire.
I feel like looking at that external list of people, that I should almost right now create a fake email and just put all those people in a blind copy so I can have it at the ready when the time comes. Because that's a lot of people to try to contact, even our people we have MOUs with, that list is extensive.
And it depends on, right, so that list of external vendors, as an example, becomes important if you're short of saline, right? So when you are dealing with a supply chain issue, maybe if you have regular deliveries and you're dealing with an active shooter event, it might be important to communicate that your folks should not be coming in for their afternoon delivery. Or if you're shutting down clinics because of weather, maybe the pickup for the laboratory services, maybe rather than that person drive out to a closed facility, maybe that's something you would communicate. For my communications pros, there's a big list here. What has worked best for your communications teams? And we have a communications team here in the room, but you each, hopefully, likely, have people that are formally trained in communications. That could mean social media. That can mean, preparing somebody to be in front of the press. It could be someone who helps write internal communications that are part of your response. If you don't, it's an Avenger that you want, because I've never been to your facilities, I just met you today, and I've never read a single one of your AARs. But I will guarantee that communication is the most frequently cited issue in your AARs. because it's where we all struggle and it means so many different things. And so if you don't have a communications Avenger, you want one. And you want to figure out how you're going to get one, how you'll build one. I remember the first hire I was able to hire into the department of one, right, when I was at Boston Children's. They said, well, the department's getting really big. We put in the budget money for an administrative assistant. And I said, I don't need an administrative assistant. I need a comms specialist. I need somebody who has media training to work with me on all the messaging around education, not just response, but everything that I was doing. So what are some things that have worked to anybody from a communications when you are putting your message together? What are some best practices? Yes.
Accurately identifying your audience and the means to reach them.
All right. So I need to know my audience and I need to know my channel is what I'm hearing. Yes, 100%. What else?
Your emergency manual, I have pre-typed messages that if I'm not there, page overhead, that my staff can read almost verbatim.
So the equivalent of a holding statement, right? These templated messages, whether it's an internal message or an external message, whether it's a vendor message or it's a family member message, maybe it's a senior leadership message, right? I'm old enough that Mad Libs is something that used to do as a kid, and so I like to think of templated messages a lot like Mad Libs, right? So you basically write the fluff and then you leave space where the name of the incident and who you're talking to and when you're going to talk to them again. And so it saves time and it organizes the communication message. Anything else that has worked for people? Yes?
Using words that are easily understood by everyone.
I love it. So what grade, if you're typing into a ChatGPT, what grade level are you asking it to come out with for your message, right? You can say this and this and this and this and this and give it back to me in a professional tone with an empathetic, or a professional empathetic tone, and at what reading level? What's a good, this is a question. What? Sixth or lower for, non-technical specialist messaging. Anybody here using ChatGPT to write any of their initial draft communications? Is that something that people do to save time? Have they had?
Organizations have banned it. A lot of IS teams have banned it for data security.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
It's verboten. Okay.
Another piece to a larger organization for a while now, it's something that's important to us in a situation like this. If it was a widely like we've been talking about, we always choose kind of that director level that you talk about that has the access to senior leadership and to the rest of the frontline team. They act as our gatekeeper, kind of. So the person that's running our incident command from a public information officer perspective, they need to be able to do the work. So we identify that director or VP level that it's their job to talk to the VPs that have a bunch of questions about how are we sharing information so that we make sure that that role in incident command has the space to do the work.
It's beautiful. So we heard understand the audience and understand the channel. If I wanted to get to the nurses in a hospital setting, can I send them an email?
No. I was going to bring that up when you asked for gaps. The emails go out and the frontline staff do not read their emails.
Why not?
They're busy.
They're busy. So what might work? Okay, so they can call for a huddle. What closed loop communication tool do you use in your hospital? Written. SBAR? Anybody use SBAR? Situation background assessment, recommendations. What if you typed up your email message and you included an SBAR? Do people recognize what an SBAR is? What if you printed that SBAR out and you gave it to a runner and said, go to these units, find the charge nurse, make sure that they read this, and if they have any follow-on questions, make sure that they call down to the command center or they leave the message with you. Now, is that going to work when they're busy managing the clinical needs of the department? That might work. So understanding that it's not just an audience and it might not just be one channel. You might have to get creative. I didn't do this, but a place that a colleague of mine that worked at another large academic hospital They would put written cards on the trays outbound to the floors that say, please forgive us as we respond to an operational disruption, right? Like acknowledging, to Mia's point earlier, that there is an event going on, but letting the staff know we're on it. And doing it in a way that was personalized, right? So it went out with the trays. I thought that was great. You want your methods to be redundant, interoperable, secure, tested regularly, and able to reach the intended audience. We all have mass notification systems now. They're incredibly powerful, and they're also like, you're able to make a small mistake, like amplify it, tenfold. So I like to keep the keys to those systems under strict, break glass protocol. Very few people have access to it. But in general, these are the communication methods. The content culturally competent, clear, concise, and accurate, and consistent across all channels. This is from the CDC's crisis response guidebook, CREC. It's a link, I think, in our resources. 3, 30, 3 short sentences, 3 key messages, 30 words max. It's a tweet. And it's a helpful guide for those that have not had a lot of experience writing risk communications. It's where your response is going to be won or lost, how well you communicate, how frequently you communicate. I've never heard anybody say they over-communicated. So that's module 4. Here's where you write yourself a love note on something that you picked up in this module that you feel you will change or do or enhance when you get back home.